I want to thank you all for being here at 8 o'clock this morning. Liz Scott turned to me on the bus and says, whose idea was it to have these 8 o'clock in the morning? I like to have classes at 8 o'clock in the morning because I know who the interested parties are and where the future of the nation lies. So thank you all for being here. Jim, I can just echo his thanks to people to get this symposium off and running. This is a first-of-a-kind technical symposium. Thanks to Tom Jones again for making the university available to us. In the future, I encourage you always to have these symposia at universities, at institutions of knowledge, because that's what this science is about. And it's desperately needed in this age. Cleaning is the most fundamental process we use to keep our environment in order, to has enhanced the quality of life and health on the planet. When I was here 9 years ago, this area was desert. Today it's an urban environment. The population of the world is 6.4 billion people. In the next 25 years, that'll go somewhere between 9 and 11 billion people on a global village economy. We have to know how to clean and maintain for the finite amount of space that we live in. I'm going to tell you why I think this is such an important meeting. In my way of thinking, it's a milestone for me personally. In 1984, I was given the assignment in EPA to establish an indoor air research program under the provisions of Title IV of Superfund. Congress asked the question to EPA at the time, why are people complaining indoors? Well, one of the reasons they were complaining indoors at the time is because we had come out of the energy crisis of the 70s and we literally wrapped these closed environments even tighter and trapped all the pollutants and diseconomies of life inside the building, and people responded to it adversely. That was a basic reason. But that legislation asked people like me to go out, find out what the cause of the problems were, and report back to the nation. Well, EPA, as you probably know, is basically a chemical regulatory agency by virtue of its many different fragmented statutes. They know nothing about cleaning. For that matter, nobody in federal government knows anything about cleaning. One of the first, about 2 years into that exercise, we began to see things like VOCs bothered people and radon was a risk, and we knew nothing about microbiological activity because we had no programs in EPA. But I'm not one to sit at a desk and just theorize. So I would go out and respond to these, mainly to learn, to respond to a lot of these complaints in these buildings around the country. And everything I noticed where we had legitimate health complaints, mainly in federal buildings, government buildings, was the building was filthy or it had tremendous roof leaks. And my general advice was, well, before I can find the chemical of the month causing your problem, please plug up your roof leak, clean the building, and call me back. Well, they do that, and I never get a call back. And you begin to figure it out. It's the filth in the building, in many part, plus the operation of the building, the microbiology of the building causing the problem. Next thing I began to do is connect with the cleaning industry, as best I could determine it. A couple of the people are in this room. Jeff Bishop is one of them. I actually paid money to take his carpet cleaning class once. Then he found out I was from EPA, and he nearly had a heart attack. The thing I noticed about certain segments of your industry is they knew how to do it, but they didn't know why it worked. And I kept saying, where's the science? Where's the science behind this? And for many years, many of you have heard me say, we have no science of cleaning in the United States. There's no codified body of information that tells us how the system works. And if we don't know how cleaning works, we can't make it effective. And more importantly, we can't have a profession, because a profession is an endeavor based upon knowledge. Well, folks, we're in a knowledge factory. We're in a great knowledge factory right now, and we certainly have the beginnings of cleaning science. It's only taken 20 years to get here. Don't quit. More than ever before, we have to understand the potential and value of this endeavor that you're all interested in hearing about today. Now, what I'm going to try to do in this talk is provide you with a framework, answer some basic questions. What's a science? What's clean? What's cleaning? Cleaning is a process. Why is that important? What are the science concepts associated with each step of the process that makes it effective? We need to begin to develop the science and knowledge base. The papers we have worked on here today represent our critical mass thinking, those of us in the scientific community, of what we think is important. It's just a start. It's not the answer and final answer to anything. It's just the beginning. And a lot of the things we're going to hit on in this symposia are very, very important. But just as important as what we talk about in this symposia is what we don't talk about, what we don't know. Like in detail, how chemicals work to clean. That's a start. How do you test technologies? How do you know you've been effective at cleaning? Folks, you don't know unless you measure it. Where are we measuring it? Well, by and large, we aren't. And members of the Science Advisory Committee will not necessarily cram information down your throat. They will suggest to you the ways that we can begin to look at this, the research needs. And by the way, you need to understand what research is. It's the process of guided learning, the research we need in order to move forward in the field of cleaning. So with that, let me begin. Try to provide a framework, a way to look at cleaning as a science. First, what's a science? Let's go back to some very basic terms. It's something you got out of when you took an English class. Now, science is a particular body of knowledge derived from the objective principles involving observation and experimentation with matter and the processes of the physical world. Science used to be called natural philosophy. Every science we've got comes from the observation that humans make of the world around them. It answers the question, how? That's what it does. Science explains how. Science, every science, medical science, physical science, chemistry, it's a body of proven concepts and definitions. First thing you do when you open a science book, it defines things for you. I read cleaning standard after cleaning standard after cleaning standard, in this green age, and not once have I heard anybody define clean and cleaning. What's the objective? There's no science there. Well, we've got to turn that around. Cleaning science explains how cleaning works. Now, over and over again in this symposium, you're going to hear the science advisors use the same terms. And we've had to work hard to get an agreement as to what we mean by our definitions. It's no easy task. And if you can't agree on the definition of clean and cleaning, folks, then we're not talking about the same thing. Clean is a condition free of unwanted matter. It's not a tough concept. You've got unwanted matter in the carpet. You've got unwanted matter in dirty clothes. You've got unwanted matter on the wall. Cleaning is the process of putting that unwanted matter in its proper place. In other words, in the natural flows of matter and energy of the natural world around us. Ooh, starting to talk like a greenie berry. Well, cleaning is green. Cleaning is environmentally protected. It is part of the world around us. Matter that we move is anything that is of solid, liquid, gaseous form. Comes from the Latin meaning anything of substance, materia. That's what it means. Anything of substance. Matter can be measured. It's influenced by gravity. All matter is influenced by gravity. These are concepts. These are concepts you have to really fully understand and appreciate in order to clean effectively in the long run, or to be professionally cleaning. It can be living or non-living. It can be organic or inorganic. When I throw the word out organic, I mean something different than a psychologist means. Organic to a scientist means it contains carbon. All we've heard about global warming, it's global climate change into humankind as we know it tomorrow. What are we talking about? We're talking about the carbon cycle, the carbon-oxygen cycle, and photosynthesis is in the middle. It's those carbon bonds that store the energy in the world around us. Okay? It's all inorganic. It doesn't have carbon. Abiotic. It's not living. Biotic. It's living. Abiotic and biotic interact in these environments we call ecosystems. Eco comes from the word, the Greek word meaning home. Ecosystem is a home system. You'll hear Dr. Cole talk about ecology. It's the study of homes. This is a home to us all right now. We're interacting with each other. We're interacting with the environment around it. Matter and energy. If matter gets in the way here, we've got to get it out of the way. We call that the process cleaning. Okay? It's an environmental management process. And that's great. A lot of this unwanted matter can pile up, can stack up indoors, and humans are exposed to it, and they can act adversely to it. And they always will. If you did nothing in regards to cleaning in this environment, after a while, we could not stand to live here. No creature could stand to live here. And like other creatures in the world, they move on. We're the only creature on the planet that really maintain our environment. We do it to protect ourselves from the natural forces of the environment outside. Cleaning is the process used to achieve the clean condition. Once again, it's a fundamental environmental management process of putting unwanted matter in its proper place. Now, you know, cleaning science involves all the general sciences. So does environmental science. Environmental science doesn't necessarily go deep. Environmental science goes broad. It brings together under one cover all the sciences that humankind has pulled together over the last 15,000 years. Ever since human beings settled down and started documenting what goes on in the world around them. And I tell you, in the last 100 years, our knowledge of how the world around us works is just, enormous better understanding. That's why we don't die at the age of 40. We have a life expectancy well into our 80s. It's because we understand how the world around us works. Environmental science, as related to cleaning, emphasizes systems and connectedness. Folks, you've got to know the system if you're going to survive. I tell my students this. Coming home from Vietnam, I went back to graduate school, and I remember in one of my graduate school days hearing a message from outer space. Houston, we have a problem. Remember that? Apollo 13. It's been talked about over and over again. Halfway to the moon, where they're going to do a reconnaissance about the moon, they blew out all the life support systems on the spacecraft. Now, they made it back to Earth. You know why they made it back to Earth? The only reason they made it back to Earth is because they understood A to Z every component of their system. They understood how that system worked. And through that knowledge, they were able then to make decisions to sustain their life. We have the same situation going for us today on planet Earth. It's a big spaceship in the sky. We better understand how it works if we're going to make the necessary decisions in order to sustain our quality of life on this planet. If you're going to effectively manage an indoor environment through cleaning, you got to understand how the system works, and you got to understand that everything in that system is connected in some way to everything else by virtue of matter and energy flowing between those connected compartments. I don't mean to make this highbrow or academic, but folks, if we're going to have a science, let's go to science. And that's essentially what we're working at. Okay, an environment's a set of connected compartments through which matter and energy flow. A major subcompartment of this environment is anything that holds matter. It's your carpet, it's us, it's the walls, elevated surfaces, HVAC systems. And no matter where the matter is, it's going to move. One thing about matter, it never sits still. Matter constantly moves. It's the first and second law of thermodynamics. You never destroy matter. You just move it around. Or you turn it to energy. You never destroy energy. You turn it to matter. You move it around. It's a constant flow of matter and energy. That's the basic understanding, the basis, that's where we start with cleaning science. Somebody says, I clean the room, I'll never have to do it again. Wrong. You won't. Or, I cleaned it last month. Or, okay, got 1,000 kids in the school. How often do I have to clean it? Well, what's the activity of the 1,000 kids? 4 times a day you have to clean it. Okay? Moving the matter in order to keep people healthy. Now, here's an example. Many times, well-intending people, they'll say, well, carpet cleaning sure does improve air quality, Dr. Berry. You're absolutely correct. It does, especially if that carpet is loaded with unwanted matter. Because the unwanted matter transfers to the air in proportion to the amount of matter in the compartment. And also what we call the transfer rate constant, that represents the holding capacity of that product. Okay? It's not an infinite sink. Anybody that tells you it's going to be a wonderful trap, well, it is up to an extent. But I'd tell you just as important to indoor air is outdoor air, probably more important. Or your HVAC system and ventilation. That's connectedness. Or the wall. Or us just walking around. If you measure CO2 level, you think CO2 level is bad outdoors? Wait till I'm done. Okay. Well, that's just it. So where's it coming from? It's coming from me breaking energy bonds inside my body and bringing in oxygen and excreting out carbon dioxide. Got to know how the system works. What's it a measure of? Environmental quality. Ice cap meltdown? No. In this door, it might be, ventilation effectiveness would probably be a measure, a better indication of that. The fact is, you've got to recognize connectedness, and you've got to recognize that you just can't, for example, clean part of the environment. If you've got a restroom, otherwise known as a human waste transfer point, please understand we want the human waste to remain there to protect us out here. So that means when we clean, we don't want to be bringing some of the pathogens associated with that human waste into our presence. We're trying to reduce the exposure. There's connectedness. Now, too much of what we know going on in the environment, we can't see. You have to measure it. I've never seen an electron. Have you? Have you ever seen an atom? Anybody see an atom? How about a virus? Maybe Gene and some of you other guys, electron microscope, sure, they've seen viruses. I don't have access to the eyes that you've got. I know they're there. I know you can measure them. I know you can detect it. I know they can do certain things. So much of what we've done in cleaning is simply what you perceive, what you see. Got some news for you. All you see is rearranged matter, and the light is tricking you. Okay? You haven't moved anything. You haven't measured it. That's why measurement is so important. It's important to understand the difference between closed and environmental systems. There's some basic concepts. Buildings tend to be closed systems. In a closed system, matter and energy remains within the building. Now, that's both good and bad. One thing about a closed system is if you know all the matter is in here, you can manage it. But by golly, you don't want that matter to build up so much that it overwhelms you, that it causes an adverse effect to your physiology. Now, in these systems, within a closed system, these compartments transfer around. And keep in mind, the matter is still coming in. We keep bringing it in. Every time we come into an environment, we bring additional matter into the environment. We're throwing off thousands of skin scales constantly, millions a day. Okay? We're tracking things into the environment all the time. And it's closed. It's staying in the environment until such time as you get control of it and get it out to reduce the exposure level. What's that a function of? It's a function of activity level. What does that suggest to you? You have to clean different environments different ways. Pay attention to my good friend Gene Cole in his next presentation, where he talks about the essentiality of being able to recognize and understand different cleaning needs for different environments. You know, we know quite a bit. Does this bother anybody being nervous? Those are first order differential equations. You know, can you solve them? You know, can you? You don't have to wing it. Pretend you do. Pretend you know how. You engineers, we'll talk about math skills. It's important, man. I am not. By the way, this is an important point. If you don't understand science, try to understand it. Don't worry if you don't. Just put it to memory, and sometime 20 years from now, you'll be standing in the shower and you say, I don't understand it. Do what I tell my students. Wing it. If in doubt, wing it. Okay, get started. Now, you know, we've gotten so much data, are knowledgeable of environments, we can actually model mathematically what goes on in these environments. This is a model I put together some years ago. And by the way, I trust this model 1,000 times over than I do the global warming model. You know why I can say that? This model pertains to a closed system. And I got control over that system. I have no control over that complex outdoor system. I can bound my system mathematically. And by the way, you know, I can use this model. In this particular model here, I'm going to use this Brigham Young special. In this particular model, like each of these little things here, behind this one thing, thousands of these kind of equations, literally thousands. I was a math major at an early age. I would have killed for this model. You know, this ability now with our computer systems to grasp the complexity of what's going around us. You can actually use these equations with certain assumptions. You can have people walking into an environment. In this particular environment, this is a carpet environment. This is a carpet. This is a hard floor. This is air quality. This is elevated surfaces. All these are different compartments now, and I'm moving matter between those compartments. Here I've got built into this model cleaning, vacuuming or carpet cleaning, carpet extraction, and I can figure out how much you take out at certain points in time. Then I can get people walking into the building, mathematically, walking into the building, and I can tell you for each of these compartments, okay, what to expect in terms of, let's say, in this particular model, particulate matter. I can do it for VOCs. I might get a lot of argument from Maryland, but we can theoretically do it using these type of systems thinking models. Okay? I mean, that's where we stand today. Now, if I understand how it works, then I can begin to make estimates about how often I need to clean things in order to keep the levels down to a level I wouldn't expect a health complaint. Your federal government has spent billions of dollars, not billions, but hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 40 years collecting health intelligence. Why don't you use it? Why don't you use it? That health intelligence will tell you what dose response is, what you can expect in terms of human, for certain things, let's say the VOCs, or for particulate matter for sure, or for carbon monoxide for sure, and certain other substances. So we've got an abundance of information that we can now put together and begin to predict what's going to happen. Now the output here is an example, and this gets the point across these monotonically increasing curves, ever-increasing curves. If you don't clean any environment, you simply leave it alone, after a while, particulate matter is going to build up in that environment. This particular, I put it on a year scale. This colored curve 3 is particulate matter in air. Notice how your air levels continually build up. Where's it coming from? All outdoors? No, it's transferring from these other compartments. Notice how that goes up as the matter in each of these compartments goes up. Curve number 2, that's elevated surfaces. That's like a dusty shelf. Curve number 1 would be particulate matter on a hard floor. You don't think a hard floor is a polluting compartment? Some news for you. It has more transfer, to the air than a carpet does, because its transfer rate constant is greater. Transfer rate constant is a fraction of material that transfers from the compartment in proportion to the amount of matter in the compartment. Science, okay? This is science. Science tells you this. 4, your carpet stuff builds up. How does it get there? Nobody's coming in the building. Deposition is stuff falling out of the air into the carpet. Now, if you track it in, if people keep tracking it in, that's going to build up higher. Everybody see the connectedness? Okay, so what's our goal? Our goal, if we're interested in cleaning for health or environmental protection indoors, is to clean in a way we keep these exposure levels down. I'll show you what happens. If you turn the ventilation on, if you simply get matter coming in and going out, these curves reach what we call a steady state. They reach a point where you've got as much coming in as going out, but they're still elevated. And they're still transferring between each other. So here, by just turning the ventilation on, you're up here at about 35, 40 micrograms per cubic meter. That's what I consider a dirty acceptable background. That's typical in an unclean building. We have enough science to know right now that if you clean a building, I should be able to get my particulate matter level down below 20 micrograms per cubic meter. And I know, for example, with all my health intelligence, that if I get 100 micrograms per cubic meter, I'm going to start getting some significant health complaints. That's why when the Green Label VAC testing program established its 100 microgram level, there was a basis in science for that number. I'm very discouraged today to watch people go crazy trying to change that. Now they want to count particles. Number of particles floating around the environment tells me nothing in terms of health effects. I have no database to relate it to anything. You can play numerology with all this, all you want. There's a basis in science for the numbers that we choose. Some numbers are better than other numbers. Okay, just ventilation alone would bring that to steady state. We'll keep it, to where you love it. By the way, nobody's coming in and out of this building. Now what happens here is if you want to see the effect of cleaning, if you take, for example, just the relationship between, let's say, a carpet and air quality, you can begin to see these curves over time. Now let me clean the carpet. Let me empty that compartment of its unwanted matter. Immediately, what you essentially do, look at what the effect it has on air quality. It brings your air quality down into a highly acceptable level. You're not going to get a complaint at that level. Now, we know, we have enough science today, based upon our research, that if I go into a carpet and I measure 2 grams per square meter of particulate matter in the carpet, I can predict an adverse effect on the air quality. That's the studies that Gene and I and others have been doing for the past 20 years. Now we have to use that knowledge. What does it mean? Well, it means if I go in and I find a carpet or a rug with more than 2 grams per cubic square meter in it, I want to do something about it. I don't want that to happen. It's not hard to keep it there either, folks, even in the most trafficked way. A good vacuum cleaner will do it. Keeps the matter down. Keeps the matter under control. Begin to see there's a science basis for this. Now, here's the important thing. When you understand how it works, then you can start devising cost-effective ways of making it effective. Every cleaning process involves 5 or 6 steps. I started writing about this, 15 years ago. These steps involve specifying the environment. You have to have knowledge of the environment you're dealing with. This unique ecosystem that Gene's going to talk about. You have to locate and identify the matter you're dealing with. Now, am I dealing with a gas? Am I dealing with a living organism? Am I living with an organic substance, a hydrocarbon? What am I dealing with? I have to have knowledge of that. Because then I have to separate it. I can separate it mechanically, okay? Mechanically. I can separate it chemically. But it depends on what I'm working with. I have to contain it. I have to contain a gas differently than I do a liquid, different than I do a solid. I got to know what I'm dealing with. I sure the heck better know what I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with a microorganism. They all don't respond to the same amount of heat. If you're using heat to neutralize them or kill them, they don't respond to the same chemical. A virus needs a living host. Bacterium doesn't necessarily. Fungi have an absolute requirement for water. This knowledge helps me make decisions as to how I manage this. Okay? Then I need to contain it so that it can be removed. I remove it through transport. There's only four ways to transport environmental transport. There's only 4 ways you can do it. And one of the ways, I'll talk about in a minute, carriage on current, you need a fluid. We only have 2 kinds of fluids, air and water. And something about those fluids, especially the gas, it always goes from high pressure to low pressure. In terms of the fluid, water runs downhill. Why? That's gravity, force of gravity. You know, I make no embarrassment for talking basic science to something as important as keeping unwanted matter that can harm human beings in its proper place. Then you have to properly dispose of it. That's not necessarily due. You need to put it back in the natural cycle so that the natural forces of the environment will process it. Once again, you never get rid of it. You simply move it around. This is a huge problem with our national environmental programs and policies. They're fragmented. They don't recognize air control, doesn't recognize water control, doesn't recognize solid waste control. We end up chasing pollutants around. We end up doing some real dumb things because 40 years ago our lawmakers and our scientists we didn't have the ability to understand connectedness. Folks, you do. I just demonstrated to you, you can now harness this connectedness where you have an integrated management system. Cleaning is always applied to an environment or a subcompartment. Okay, and you know, we use sinks, we use traps, whatever. What we're trying to do in this science of cleaning is get some consistency in our description of things. Specifying this environment forces us to understand, you know, how this matter behaves. I've gone through some of these points. First law of thermodynamics, conservation of matter and energy. Don't destroy it, you move it around. You now know what happens in a closed environmental tendency. One thing you need to understand is every organized environmental system will seek its state of disorder. It's the second law of thermodynamics. So you organize an environmental system, walk away from it, its entropy is going to take over, especially in relation to the amount of activities in that environment. The more things and activities we have in an environment, the more cleaning we need. Chemistry is the study of substance. You've got to know how chemistry works. And one thing that Marilyn will introduce today is some basic knowledge of how chemicals work in cleaning. But where we put most of our research attention over the last 40 years has been on the unwanted consequences of chemicals. We still don't know how chemicals work. Most people in this room don't know how soap works. You got to understand the mechanisms of action. Now, I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure anybody in this room understands how they work, but that's okay. If they work, use them, is the attitude. You know, I always know when somebody doesn't know anything about the product they're selling, when I'm saying, would you tell me how your chemical works? That's proprietary information. Meaning, duh. We're not telling you that. That's a trade secret. I take the jug of whatever to the lab, and 2 days I'm back with a report on their desk saying, here's what your product is, and here's what it does. And typically my conversation has been on the negative side of the spectrum. We need to put the conversation on the positive side of the spectrum. Folks, a lot of the green cleaning movement is misdirected. It's not about chemical substitution that protects the environment. It's about the effective use of the chemical. I can tell you horror stories after horror stories of green chemicals that I have found polluting the environment. It has nothing to do with the chemical. Now, I'll tell you something else. If the chemical doesn't work, People are going to have a tendency, untrained people, to try more of it. And all you're doing is interjecting unworkable chemistry into the environment. We call that a pollutant. So let me go back, put this, in the proper perspective. We need to understand how the chemistry works, what it does, where it's appropriate, how to manage it. And if we don't, we're going to have what we currently have in the cleaning industry today is one of the highest accident rates of any industry around, because people don't know how to use their product. This was told to me by a fine manager this morning. It's all about performance. Dead on. It's all about performance. Okay. For cleaning to be effective, pollutant or all of its part need to be dislodged and moved to the environment or subcompartment. Now, I don't know. I got to go back here. I think I missed something. I don't know if this is a slide. Containment's important, but before we begin this cleaning process, we have to understand the nature of the environment we're working with. Every environment's a unique ecosystem, home system. Living and non-living creatures, relate to each other and cause each other effects depending upon their quantity, depending upon their appetite, their species, and their nature. In every cleaning process, we need to take this unwanted matter and move it out of that system. The more pollutants we transport from that environment, the more effective is the cleaning. This gets that effective cleaning. So much of what's been cleaning is appearance. That's something that is a function of what I see. And that's how light is processed. I can take unwanted matter, rearrange it, and it can look great. It's still unwanted matter. It's still unwanted matter. The exposure is still there. It's just been rearranged. There's nothing wrong with appearance. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's not what we mean by clean. That's just rearrangement of matter. Okay? So what we've got to do is contain and transport this matter from the environment. There's only certain ways you transport it. Buoyancy is one. You float it out. Warm it up, float it out. Change its density. When the density of the substance is less than the surrounding matter, it rises, grabs onto an air current and carries out. That's buoyancy. The other one is gravitational settling. When the density is greater than its surroundings, it goes to the bigger mass, it goes to the earth, it goes to gravity. The other way we use a lot in cleaning is we use carriage on currents. The currents are created by the flow of air and water. Two fluids, air and water. You use that current to transport the matter out, among other things. You also use the water for solvency and the like. You have to manage the water. That's got to be contained. There's another transport phenomenon called diffusion. This is the thing that Marilyn Black guards against in her studies. It's where you've got the substance coming off of the matter coming out of something going in all directions. Air pollution, VOCs indoors, not controlled. You have to direct it to where it doesn't cause harm. It's important to understand fluid mechanics. You understand how a vacuum cleaner works. What you do in a vacuum cleaner is you create a region of low pressure. You contain a fluid through a hose, and we always know the air is going to go from high pressure to low pressure. That's your carriage. Now you got it in there, you're going to keep it or you're going to diffuse it out all over the environment. No, you have to filter it. You have to trap it once it's in that region of low pressure. This is science. Science of cleaning. You simply don't tell an effective vacuum cleaner by the motor you hear or the green light on it. That's not measured the effectiveness of the vacuum cleaner. The effectiveness of the vacuum cleaner is measured by how much matter is contained, trapped, and moved on, put in a way it doesn't cause harm. Then you need to properly dispose of the unwanted matter. This is where it is. You don't, hey, I pick it up here, buddy, you want it? Not so much of that, moving it around. EPA does a lot of that. I tell you, I get so frustrated sometimes watching people take sulfuric acid sludge out of a power plant Oh, they're in compliance. They take it where? To a landfill, where it becomes leachate. You know? All they do is chase it around. Part of what we need in environmental systems today is a closed system where you make use of all these byproducts. We're learning how to do that. Sustainability, we call it. It's an emerging business issue. Folks, when you double the world population, we're going to have systems like this. We're going to have to change the way we do things. Those of you that understand how these processes work are going to have first mover advantage in the marketplace. Okay? But it's all based upon your knowledge and understanding of how the systems work. Space and time. It takes time for certain chemicals to work. It takes dwell time, for example, contact time with an antimicrobial on the microbial for it to kill. You just don't touch it. You have to know how that works. One of the things that interested me most when, these were the concepts, for example, that I heard come out of Jeff Bishop's early courses where he teaches people dwell time, part of cleaning. It takes time. You can't just speed it up. It takes time to identify what it is you're dealing with. I go to an ISSA trade show, and I want a consultant up there talking about speed cleaning. And then I'm sitting there as an environmental guy saying, now I know I have so many problems in building. Going to rush right on through it. Clean, occupied, and building. Something about matter. Two pieces of matter can't occupy the same space at the same time. I learned that in a freshman physics class. Impendability of matter. Okay? You've got to consider these components. And then I always hear, well, Dr. Barry, I don't know if we can afford this. My answer is, you obviously can't afford effective cleaning. Suggest you move out now. Effective cleaning. Effective cleaning is the process of removing the unwanted matter to the greatest possible extent, thereby ensuring acceptable risk for humans, valuable materials, and the natural environment from exposure to these unwanted substances. That is effective cleaning. Would you please tell me what is not green about that? In other words, environmentally protective. Let me tell you what isn't effective cleaning. One little sheet of toilet paper. Please don't shake hands with those kind of people. I had to say that. I just had to say it. Let me say something. So much of this blather I hear about environmental protection out there goes that direction. They haven't thought through the system. Don't get swallowed up in political correctness, guys. Political correctness is irrational. Called political decision-making is irrational. Science is rational decision-making. Effective cleaning is fully protective of the environment. Did I make my point? Probably not. You have criteria. When Gene and I have done research together and others, we sit down and say, well, how do we know we're really meeting this effective cleaning criteria? The first thing, well, we're maximizing as best we can the measurable removal. We measure what we remove. You don't see in our work us just talking about it. We measure it. Now, do we measure it perfectly? Probably not, but it's better than other people do. And if they don't like it, they can show me their data. If they don't like what we found, show me your data. Once again, as Jim has said, thank you very much, Jim, science is the only human discipline that opens itself to disproof. It's all about show me your data. It's always about measurement. You want to minimize the residue, the externalities. Every human activity has an externality. Us walking through this room has an externality. We want to minimize that as best we can. First rule of messes. Don't make one, you don't have to clean it up. That's Dennis Deaton, some of you know. Don't make the mess. Pollution prevention. That's what a lot of the green movement is, and very effective. Okay, we've got to recognize the connectedness, and you've got to clean first for health. You've got to clean for risk reduction, human risk reduction. That's what I mean. I'll talk more about that tomorrow morning. You've got to provide for safety. Heavens, yes. The way you get it, accidents occur because people outrun their knowledge or their good judgment. If we had a more of a factual basis for professionalism in the cleaning industry and we taught it, you'd have fewer accidents. And some people have been masterful at that. Some people have been masterful at that. It's all about training. You don't find accidents even in high-risk situations when people are trained. One of the most high-risk industries in the world is the chemical industry. They've got the lowest accident rate. They've taught their people how the chemical processes work and how to protect, for it. High-performance cleaning is a management process. Cleaning is a fundamental management process. You've got to apply management competencies. Every high-performance cleaning process I've seen has really been along the line of Edwards Deming's quality management system. We have constancy of purpose. You have an objective. You have measurements. You have quality tools. You have training. You have customer communication. When you find a high-performance system, it's sustainable. You don't do it once. Management is a continuous, reoccurring process. Goals and objectives, communication, motivation, education, measurement, planning. It's a constant circular process. And in terms of effective cleaning, it's for the maximum removal of these unwanted substances with the minimum externality and reduction. Now, why do we need cleaning science? I'll give you 10 reasons. Based on all my 25 years of observations throughout the country. I wish somebody from the Congress were here, because I'm answering their dumb question they asked in 1984. Why do we have problems in buildings? People don't clean them up. How do you clean? I don't know. No science of cleaning. First off, today, somebody prove me wrong. There's no widely recognized working definition of clean and cleaning. We need a definition. There's an absence of professionalism. Professionalism is an endeavor based upon knowledge. You wonder why you don't get taken seriously when government agencies come out with cleaning standards. You have no body of science to sit there and argue with them. They can get away with anything they want because of the absence of knowledge. And because there's no professionalism, we have accident rates, we have ineffective cleaning. The benefits of cleaning, utility cleaning, are not valued. I'll talk about this tomorrow morning. What are the benefits of cleaning? They're not valued. Nobody understands them. When they begin to understand them, they create a demand. The demand will then, feed into the supply. Supply is what determines price, not utility, not benefit. It's demand. The consumer needs to demand this. If they understand it realistically, they're going to demand the cleaning service. Cleaning for health is often thrown around as just a slogan. I really wish if they're going to quote me, cleaning for health, they would fully understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about risk reduction. I am talking about the movement of unwanted matter so as to reduce exposures. Cleaning effectiveness isn't measured, by and large. You can measure this stuff. Listen to Gene, listen to Marilyn, listen to Liz Scott. We'll begin to tell you how to measure this stuff. Infectious disease rates are increasing, not decreasing. This scares me to death. We bring in new chemicals in the hospitals. 1 in 10 hospital patients go into an infectious disease. Necrosable infections are out of control. Why? Something we're not doing right in those buildings. We're not cleaning them right. In this age of green, I want to see that come down. I don't want to see it keep going up. There is a correlation between cleaning and fatal diseases. I've been in and out of a hospital off and on now for the last 4 months. And I'll tell you, those people work hard in that hospital. And I sit there and I just watch infection disease all over. And all people are trying to do is guard against it. Putting on the gowns, whatever, going through the motions, but I don't think they're managing at all.
We sure have changed a lot of chemicals in recent years, folks. I questioned whether we made the right decisions, and I'd like to know the basis for that decision making. It sure isn't in science because it's not there. Cleaning industries bear occupational injury rate. That'll go down when professionalism goes up. There's limited testing. Pay attention to the testing methodologies that Carrie Mitchell is going to talk about today. If you don't test it, you can't make a claim about it. What are you testing? You're testing its cleaning effectiveness, as defined previously. And finally, ineffective cleaning reduces significant levels of externalities. It protects the environment. Since when did the cleaning industry become the greatest polluting industry in the world? You would think that, and everything you read out there about green cleaning. Effective cleaning isn't a polluting endeavor. It's an environmental protection endeavor. Okay, that kind of ends CO2 levels off scale or two. You know, today, what I ask you to pay attention to are, one, the use of definitions that we'll be going to. Gene will talk about unique environments next. He'll be followed by Dr. Liz Scott, who really understands things like cross-contamination, effective cleaning in your high-risk environments, your highest-risk environments. Following that, Dr. Marilyn Black this afternoon will talk to you about chemistry and mainly, you know, the state of art of science, the way we're looking at the effect, the unwanted effect, the externalities of cleaning chemicals. You know, she'll set the stage for maybe another symposia where we'll just address, you know, cleaning chemistry and physical mechanisms for removing that. Finally, Carrie Mitchell has done a tremendous amount of research and good work in cleaning testing systems, vacuum cleaners, testing, X-ray fluorescent, and other testing. I'll tell you what you need to do in order to set up an effective and meaningful testing program. Tomorrow I'll talk more, lead it off shorter than this talk, with talking about the benefits, and I should have really titled that the utility of cleaning. Try to put some economic concepts behind it. Gene Cole will talk to you about measurement methods tomorrow, mainly the biopollutants. We had 3 great papers. Daniel Daggett and Elizabeth Scott again and John Riker will give you an example of 3 papers that represent what you folks should be after in terms of designing research projects and coming forward in future years to present material like that, to begin to build this body of science and information which will instill effective cleaning and professionalism throughout the country. This stuff belongs in a university. Our educational system needs to be developing and teaching this stuff. This is not trade show material, ladies and gentlemen. This is for professional development. This is serious business. Far more seriously than a lot of that green babble that I hear day to day, day in and day out. This is green. This is what environmental protection is all about. Finally, after tomorrow, my good friend Steve Spivak will introduce to you some concepts and some suggestions on this green age, this green cleaning movement. Once again, I want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you will continue the course over the years in developing this body of knowledge for the purpose of enhancing the quality of life on this planet. Thank you very much.
Dr. Berry has agreed to answer some questions before our break. It's as part of our schedule. And would you please, since the session is being recorded, would you please walk to the microphone to ask Dr. Berry a question? Microphones are on either side of the room.
I was just overwhelming, wasn't I? Oh, Frank was back there like a Chinese traffic cop. I thought I was running out of time here. Yes, sir.
Doc, I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
We've heard a lot about Walter Reed here lately.
Yes, sir.
From your knowledge, can you connect the level of cleaning and maintenance in Walter Reed to what's happening there as far as treatment and infection? Do you have any of that data?
I don't know anything about Walter Reed. Let me tell you something. I'm a soldier, was a soldier, am a soldier, always will be a soldier, so's Gene. I got a gray ID card in my back pocket. I know a lot about Walter Reed. My dad was a patient there. A lot of my friends have been wounded and sent there. They were going to close Walter Reed out, okay? I mean, before this war started, Walter Reed was on the thing, get rid of it. Okay, you're a medical doctor, you're sitting there, you got all sick patients. You know, you got the bureaucracy sitting there in the background. You know, the bureaucrats are saying, I don't want to do anything in this building because I got to shut it down anyway. We're not going to spend our money on this. That's what Walter Reed is about. Yes, you have a roof leak, you have water intrusion in the building, you're going to get mold. I'll tell you something, you'll get to my section tomorrow. Our soldiers deserve better, especially our combat soldiers. I'm outraged by this, personally. But you know, what else is new? Welcome to the Army. It's gone on forever. All right? A lot of this is a lot of political hype. And yeah, they cleaned it up. And yes, somebody should hang high for it. You know, but you got to keep that in mind. That is more of political, you know, political commentary, a political gotcha job than it is protecting our troops. And quite frankly, I resent it. Yes, you get water intrusion in a building, you don't clean it up, you're going to have an unsanitary system, it's going to look bad, and especially to a wounded soldier whose immune system is compromised, you put them at unnecessary risk. We're all responsible for Walter Reed, ladies and gentlemen. That is our hospital. Let's do something about it and take care of our vets.
Yes, I really enjoyed your presentation also. I really appreciate the talk. I'd like to have you espouse a little more on measuring the environment that we as end users, I work with a company that's an end user of the products and using the services. How can we be better performers in measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing? I was wondering if you could espouse a little.
Well, you know, that's a very open question. You got to measure different things. You know, we have done in our research measurement of particulate matter. We can measure VOCs. We can measure fungal spore. We can measure bacteria counts. You know, so and the measurement techniques exist. What I'm happy to see is different industries coming together here. Okay, food service industry. A lot of what I do to measure cleaning effectiveness in a school, I got out of the food sanitation industry. If it's good enough for food processing in terms of bacteria counts, you know, it gives me a starting point for my kids. Gene Cole has had a lot more experience in that. But believe me, we've done enough research now that we can measure particulate matter in the air on surfaces. You know, we can measure certain things to a certain degree. What we need to do here in this as end users is we need to get a common data set, a common methodology, so we're not mixing apples and oranges. You can measure something one way, I can use a different methodology, and we just talk past each other. So what we really need are some common testing processes. Okay?
And Mike, we will be talking more specifically about measurement tomorrow with one of
Yeah.
the
But hang on to that question. Keep asking that question. You desperately need it, you know, as an industry.
Yes, Dr. Berry, I've heard you speak on the same general topic 2 or 3 times, either in person or by video or something like that, and every time it's better and it's got some new stuff in it, so thanks very much for that.
You haven't fallen asleep.
Not yet. Question I had is that from CIRI's standpoint, and maybe it's the answer is both of these, but you think we are lacking more in being able to measure the relation of levels of clean to levels of morbidity, or are we just need more work on measuring levels of clean?
Well, you need more work. You know, you got great starting points. I told someone last night, and Frank Hurd was there, you know, one of the best studies we have been done in this area, the Carpet and Rug Institute. You take a look, for example, at the Charles Young study. Holy cow. You talk about the effect of a clean environment on performance. That case study shows it. Remember, a case study is almost anecdotal. When you get a lot of these stories together, you begin to get you know, some central tendency and the like. And believe me, the data, the information are there. You can see it in case studies where clean environments have all sorts of advantages. I'll talk more about that tomorrow and benefits. Take a look at your best hotels and how they clean. Take a look at your most effective, consumer-friendly businesses, how they deal with cleaning. That clearly is reflected in their bottom line. They don't clean because they're successful. They're successful because they clean. That's part of their business strategy. Now, there's a lot we can do there. We can write a whole book on that. And when you do, you begin to use it and educate the consumer, then they create a demand. The consumer will create the demand. One thing I noticed of this whole thing is a survey done last week where across the nation people were saying, do the politicians help you understand these environmental issues better? And the response back by the general public was, no, they confuse the living daylights out of it. There's no rational basis for the communication. The public is dying for this information. Where is it? This is something CIRI and all of you need to help provide. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, do we have any clear definitions on what constitutes unwanted matter, both macro and micro, in various compartments?
Oh, you can come up with a list. Sure, you can. You can come up with certain organisms. CDC has that. There are list after list after list. I mean, for example, at the unwanted matter at a certain level, you don't want, for example, carbon monoxide in the air higher than
Right.
30 milligrams per cubic meter. I mean, we do have that information that human beings, you don't want to expose people. Clearly, I don't want to see any E. coli in any environment with a child. Zero. Yeah, we can come up with this list. You can come up with a hierarchy of information.
So that we'd have some normal ranges?
Huh?
So that we would have some normal ranges?
You can begin to do the normal ranges. I mean, it's no easy task. This is what Liz Scott spends her professional life looking at. So does Gene Cole. Absolutely. It's there. Okay. Now, whether or not we're going to agree necessarily on the numbers, you get into this numerology and number game. But yeah, there's certain things we clearly don't want to expose to. Absolutely there.
Well, in fact, if I may, and then we will take a break. One of the things that we want to talk about tomorrow is because of this new measurement technology that's beginning to come out, where we can now take samples and determine immediately what levels are in cleanliness out of the food service industry, we're recognizing that there may be the information now to start developing clean standards. What should it be in a school? What should it be in an office building? What level should it be in a restroom versus a classroom? A tremendous amount of work, but there's discussions going on right now that CIRI is involved in where we want to start working with the industry to identify what information is out there already and how do we start building those standards where you have pass-fail ranges like they do in food service that says this is acceptable, this is unacceptable. So we'll spend some time tomorrow in the panel discussion, so be thinking about that because we'd like to get people's input on what you know about it, where you think the issues may be. So that's a very important topic for us for tomorrow.